When a man ignores you, the most common reaction is to ask yourself, "What's wrong with me?" But what if I told you that his indifference actually says more about his own inner weaknesses than it ever could about your flaws? Carl Jung once said that what we project onto others is often just a reflection of what we fear within ourselves. So why does a man choose to ignore you? What lies behind this behavior that seems cold, but in truth, hides something far deeper? What is he trying to conceal from you, and perhaps even from himself? The male psyche, just like the female, is full of shadows, unconscious parts of the self we desperately try to suppress. Jung called this the shadow, the part of our personality whose existence we often refuse to acknowledge. A man who ignores you may be unconsciously projecting his own insecurity, fear of attachment, or even a deep sense of inadequacy onto you. He cannot face the truth. More often than not, his greatest weakness is exactly what he's trying hardest to hide. But what drives a man to behave this way? Is it pride, emotional detachment, or the fear that by paying attention to you, he may risk revealing parts of himself he prefers to keep hidden? His silence might not be a sign of strength, but rather a symptom of an inner conflict he doesn't fully understand. Jung once said that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So the question is this man truly in control, or has he become a prisoner of his own fears? This is where many women make a crucial mistake. They see his silence as a challenge to be met, and they try to prove they're willing to do anything to capture his attention and solve the mystery of this man. But Jung teaches us that true strength lies in integration, not in desperate pursuit. What happens when you stop reacting to his silence, and instead focus on what that silence reveals about you? What happens when you realize that, more often than not, a man's greatest weakness lies in his inability to handle what he feels for you? In this video, we'll explore what it truly means when a man ignores you and how his weakness can become your strength. Your greatest advantage is that you're about to see what even he can't admit to himself. And once you understand this, his silence will no longer affect you. He walks away and ignores you because he believes you'll always be there. He thinks he can come back at any moment and find you just as you were before, ready to listen, to wait, to accept even the smallest crumbs of his attention. But what happens when that certainty disappears? What happens when he realizes you're no longer the predictable woman he once took for granted? Carl Jung said that the greatest tragedy is to become what others expect of you, instead of becoming who you truly are. The illusion of man lies in his belief that he can control what he doesn't understand. But the truth is, a man only feels the consequences of absence when he realizes that the safety he once had has turned into uncertainty. His weakness isn't in leaving or ignoring you. It's in believing that nothing will change, that you'll always be there to feed his ego. But when you stop reacting, stop showing interest, stop giving that constant attention he always took for granted, something shifts. And you stop being a passive role in his story and begin to transform into a mystery he can no longer easily decipher. And this is where his internal conflict begins, because as Jung said, people fear what they cannot predict. Doubt corrodes more deeply than loss. So many women fall into the trap of trying to get the attention of a man who is ignoring them. They post indirect messages, check if he's viewed their stories, and do everything possible to stay within his line of sight. But all of this only reinforces his illusion that he still holds power over you. You don't need to prove anything. Everything changes when you realize that your absence speaks louder than any desperate attempt to get his attention. When he sees that you no longer message him, no longer react to his posts, no longer try to be seen, a void opens in his mind. The woman he thought he knew is gone, and that becomes the first real weakness of a man who's been ignoring you. He only feels in control as long as he believes you're still available. When that belief shatters, he falls into a state of uncertainty, one that may push him toward something he never expected. The real question becomes, did he just lose something truly valuable? Jung said that everything we reject in others is a reflection of what we reject in ourselves. Often, a man ignores a woman because he doesn't want to acknowledge the impact she has on him. But what happens when he suddenly realizes he's lost that influence? And now, let's go even deeper. Do you want to know the 5 most vulnerable spots of a man who's pulling away and ignoring you? Touch these, and even the proudest men begin to reconsider their attitude. So stay tuned, come with me, because what happens next might completely change the way you see this game. When you disappear from his life, he begins to feel a discomfort he never felt before. Suddenly, the presence he once took for granted is gone, and without even realizing it, you're giving him a small dose of his own medicine. The silence he once used to maintain control now turns against him. Carl Jung said that the human psyche balances between opposites, and when one extreme vanishes, the other intensifies. If he once felt comfortable ignoring you, now he's starting to feel the discomfort of your absence. The absence begins to make itself known, and it has a powerful effect. He starts to realize that you held a place in his life, and that emptiness begins to press on him. Soon after, he starts showing subtle signs. You notice that he's viewed your stories, reacted to your posts, left casual comments, as if he's silently saying, "I'm still here." But what's changed is that now he no longer feels certain that you'll always be available. The attention he once received effortlessly, the sense of importance he felt while ignoring you, has now become his greatest weakness. Jung teaches us that the human mind naturally seeks balance, and when something constant disappears, the brain shifts into a state of heightened alertness. That's exactly the effect you've had on him. The second weak spot of a man who ignores you is the sense of security he feels knowing that you're waiting for him. Men who feed off a woman's insecurity do so because it gives them a sense of control over the situation. If he senses that you can't live without him, that you're afraid to lose him, or that you believe you won't find anyone better, then it's easy and comfortable for him to ignore you. Everything changes the moment you prove the opposite, when you radiate confidence, when your energy is no longer scarce but abundant, and something inside him falls out of balance. Jung said, "What you resist, persists," and when a man realizes he's losing the control he thought he had over you, he begins to feel something he's not used to, insecurity. The game shifts when you strengthen your self-worth and stop chasing scraps of attention. You have nothing to prove and no one to chase. A woman who knows herself, who knows her worth, doesn't need to beg for his attention. She simply becomes irresistible because she refuses to put herself in the position of someone who needs. When you reach that level of self-assurance, you not only reclaim your power, you also destabilize his sense of security. He no longer has the certainty that he can ignore you whenever he pleases. And it's in that moment that he begins to ask himself, what if she's no longer there when I decide to come back? Before we move on to the third weak spot of a man who ignores you, I want to ask you, have you ever to chat GPT. Have you ever been in a similar situation? Have you ever felt like a man was ignoring you simply because he knew he could do it without consequences? If this content is helping you, give it a like right now and let me know in the comments where you're watching this video from. And don't go anywhere, because at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how to make a man who pulls away learn to value you and even fear losing you. So stay with me, because now we're moving on to the next weak spot, one that could completely change the game. When a man pulls away and starts ignoring you, he does it with the arrogance of someone who sees himself as the center of your universe. He feels unique, as if his presence is essential to your happiness. And do you know why? Because many women, often without realizing it, feed this illusion. They dive into the relationship, pour all their energy into it, and forget that there are other areas of their life that deserve attention too. Carl Jung once said that whatever we invest our energy in grows. And when all your energy is focused on a man who's ignoring you, you're only amplifying his power. He believes he has power over you, but what happens if he suddenly realizes he's no longer the only one you're interested in? The third weak spot of a man who ignores you is precisely that sense of exclusivity he thinks he holds. To break this toxic cycle, you need to weaken the superiority complex that keeps him in his comfort zone. And the best way to do that? Strengthen your own connections with friends, family, and the people who make you feel whole and valued. Chances are, without even realizing it, you may have distanced yourself from them. You've been focusing all your attention on this man who now ignores you. But when you start reconnecting with the people around you, something powerful happens. Your life begins to take on new perspectives, new colors. You begin to realize that he was never, and will never be, the only source of your happiness. This doesn't mean you need to find another man to replace him. On the contrary, the point isn't to find someone else, it's to expand your vision of the world. By strengthening your social connections, you open yourself up to meeting new people, to new experiences, and to a fuller, more empowered life. He begins to explore an environment that feels unfamiliar to him, and your presence starts to become increasingly magnetic. And do you know what happens to him in that moment? That feeling of being irreplaceable starts to fade. Jung said that people fear losing control over what they believe they possess. And when a man realizes that he's no longer the center of your universe, he begins to feel the very same uncertainty he once made you feel. Insecurity, that's another deep vulnerability he unconsciously carries within himself. He needs to feel important to you. Many men convince themselves that a woman needs them more than they need her emotionally or financially, and that gives them a false sense of security. But when you show him that your life doesn't depend on his presence, that you don't need him, and instead you choose the one who is worthy of standing beside you, something shifts. You're no longer the needy woman he could ignore without consequence. You become an independent woman who doesn't require anyone to feel whole. And that scares him, because it means that if he wants to be part of your life, he'll have to prove that he brings something truly valuable to the table. That's when the real game begins. He can ignore you if he wants to. But when you grow, evolve, and become stronger and more confident in yourself, he no longer holds power over you. He realizes that it's not you losing him, it's him losing you. Before we move on to the final piece of advice that will show you exactly how to make a man who's pulling away value you, and even fear losing you, I want to ask you, have you ever noticed this pattern in your relationships? Share in the comments, and if this video opened your eyes, give it a like, because what happens next might completely change the way you see this situation. So stay with me, because we're getting close to the final piece of the puzzle. A man's self-esteem is one of his most sensitive points, and also one of his greatest weaknesses. When he chooses to pull away and ignore you, Carl Jung said that a person's identity is shaped by the projections and reflections they receive from others. When a man feels that a woman admires him, desires him, and values him, his self-esteem rises. It feeds his ego and gives him a sense of control. But what happens when that source of validation suddenly disappears? What happens when he no longer feels your unconditional attention? He becomes vulnerable, because the foundation his confidence was built on simply crumbles. The truth is, most men don't realize the impact a woman has on them until she starts to pull away emotionally. You don't need to physically ignore him or play pointless games. The real shift happens when you stop treating him as special, when you stop putting him on a pedestal, when he becomes just another person in your world, and it affects his psyche in ways he can't even explain. Jung said that the human unconscious operates symbolically. And when a man senses that the woman who once elevated him no longer acts the same, he feels as though he's losing something valuable, even if he can't pinpoint exactly what it is. This is one of the most powerful weak spots in a man. He becomes accustomed to being desired and admired, without having to do anything to maintain that status. But the moment that validation disappears, something inside him begins to shift. What once was merely a comfort now becomes a need, a void he doesn't know how to fill. And this is where you must stay one step ahead. Instead of begging for attention or trying to prove your worth, simply take back your energy and redirect it toward yourself. Become the woman who doesn't need him to feel beautiful. This shift will make him realize that he has lost something he once took for granted. The secret to intelligently impacting his self-esteem lies in applying the principle of reciprocity. Jung said that relationships are a mirror. And if you always reflect admiration, desire, and attention in him, without receiving the same in return, he will never feel the need to value it. When you fuel his self-esteem, when you trust him and show affection, you must be sure you're receiving the same in return. If he feels he can get everything from you without any effort, if he believes he deserves your loyalty just because he exists, he will never truly appreciate you. That's why so many women ultimately, they end up disappointed, because they give everything, hoping that someday in some vague future, he will finally appreciate it and reciprocate. But that is exactly what you need to change. A woman who knows her worth never gives anything for free. She understands that there must be balance in a relationship. And now, before we move on to the final piece of advice, the one that will show you how to make a man who's pulling away, fear losing you, and start truly valuing you, I want to ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you gave more than you received? Write to me in the comments. And if this video opened your eyes, give it a like, because what comes next could completely shift the way you see this situation. So stay with me, because now we're getting to the most important part of it all. The real shift happens when you realize that the way a man treats you is a direct reflection of how he perceives his value in your life. If he feels like he can ignore you, and you'll still be there, waiting for a drop of attention, he will never be afraid to lose you. Carl Jung said. He explained that people have an unconscious drive to test the boundaries of others, to see how far they can go without facing consequences. Many men do this in relationships without even realizing it. They pull away, ignore, act indifferent, because deep down, they believe that no matter what they do, the woman will still be there. But what happens when that certainty suddenly disappears? When you stop giving him unconditional support and take away the sense of safety he once felt, his ego enters a crisis, because he was used to the idea that your attention was guaranteed. He may have gotten it with little effort before, but the moment he realizes he has to actually work to win her back, he begins to feel something he may have never truly felt before: insecurity. Jung said that the human psyche craves patterns and predictability, and when a woman suddenly changes her behavior, a man who thought he had everything under control, starts to feel deep discomfort. He realizes the rules of the game have changed, and now he has to prove that he's worth something. This is the difference between a woman who is valued and a woman who is ignored. The first one understands that her attention is a gift. She is not obligated. She doesn't chase him. She doesn't beg. She doesn't settle for less than she deserves, and when a man feels that he could actually lose her, he's forced to reevaluate his behavior. His desire to control turns into a need to be accepted again, but the most important part is this: you're no longer seeking his approval. You become the woman who chooses who is worthy of standing beside her. And it's this mental shift that finally makes him realize your true worth. But there's one more crucial detail to make this influence truly powerful. You need to act with sincerity. It's not about pretending to be uninterested or playing mind games. It's about truly understanding that you were never meant to beg for anyone's attention. The biggest mistake a woman can make is to live in hope that a man will one day finally appreciate her, all while she fails to recognize her own worth. Jung said that what we accept in others is a reflection of what we accept in ourselves. So if you accept less than you deserve, if you keep investing in someone who isn't investing in you, that's the message you're sending to yourself. Your subconscious is telling you that you're not enough, and that belief needs to be broken right now. Imagine what happens when a man realizes that you no longer need him to feel radiant, complete, or at peace. Imagine the confusion in his mind when he suddenly feels the loss of control he thought he always had. It's in that moment that he feels fear. Fear of losing you. Fear of no longer being significant. Fear of realizing he may have made the biggest mistake of his life. And it's also in that moment that you finally gain control. So before we go any further, the final piece of advice I want to leave you with is this. Have you noticed this dynamic in your own life? Because in the end, the most important question isn't about him, it's about you. Why did you settle for so little when you've always deserved so much more? Carl Jung said that what we don't confront within ourselves, we eventually project outward. Have you been spending too much time worrying about a man who's ignoring you? Worrying about what he feels, what he wants, what he's thinking? Then maybe it's time to ask yourself, where is that same loyalty when it comes to you? At some point you hand your self-worth over to him. The biggest mistake a woman can make is believing she has to prove her value to someone who should have seen it all along. The truth is harsh, but it's also liberating. If a man feels he can ignore you without losing anything, he will never truly value you. And if he believes he can come back at any time, and you'll still be there, unchanged, accepting, without him having to do anything to earn your presence, then he will never fear losing you. You teach others how to treat you. You are the one who defines the boundaries of what you accept and what you don't. And if you haven't been valued until now, maybe it's time to completely shift that dynamic. Because the truth is, deep down, this isn't about him. It's about how you see yourself. Jung said that everything we attract is a reflection of what we carry inside. So if you keep attracting men who ignore you, who pull away, who fail to give you the priority you deserve, then it's time to look within. When did you start accepting that kind of treatment? When did you start believing that you have to fight for someone's attention? But a woman who knows her worth doesn't beg to be seen. She shines effortlessly. And here's the key point. The man who's ignoring you today may appear confident, but deep down, he fears losing control. He fears no longer being the center of your world. He fears realizing that he may have lost the attention of an extraordinary woman. And if you follow everything you've learned here, if you strengthen your self-worth and become emotionally independent and no longer willing to settle for less than you deserve, you will feel the shift. And in that moment, he'll be left with two choices. Either he learns to truly value you, or he realizes he never had the kind of power over you he once believed he did. But ask yourself this. Do you really want someone who only recognizes your worth when he's afraid of losing you? Isn't it time to shift your perspective and understand that you deserve someone who chooses you without games, without tests, without needing proof? A woman who has options will never suffer over a man who she pulls away because she knows that, in the end, true love doesn't have to be forced. True love flows naturally, and if you have to fight just to be seen, maybe it's time to stop fighting and start turning your attention inward. What you've learned today isn't just a way to make a man feel your absence. It's a way to become the kind of woman who never again has to beg for attention. It's a way to stop being the one who waits for a message, a sign, or some kind of validation, and instead start living her life fully, because she knows that self-love is the very thing that attracts everything truly worthwhile. Because the moment you shift your energy, the entire world responds to it. And that man who once believed he could ignore you suddenly finds himself desperate to reclaim what he lost. And now, I want to leave you with one final question. Do you really want to stay stuck in the same place, waiting for a man to finally recognize your worth? Or do you want to become the woman who never has to worry about that again, because she already knows exactly who she is? The answer is within you, just like your power always has been. Choice, because in the end, what truly makes you powerful isn't how you affect others, but how you see yourself. And once you understand that, you'll never again settle for less than you deserve. If this video opened your eyes, if it made you see things from a new perspective, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, so you can keep receiving content like this. Because you deserve more than just a video that makes you think. You deserve an entire journey of transformation. And this is only the beginning to begin with. If this content was helpful to you, make sure to hit the like button right now. Not only does it help me continue creating content that truly matters, but it also lets other women who need to hear this know that they're not alone. If you've ever experienced something similar, share your story in the comments. Let's talk about it. And finally, remember this: the power was always in your hands. You just needed to realize it. Now go out there and live the life you truly deserve. Don't wait. Don't doubt. Don't beg for anything. Because a woman who knows her worth never asks for what already belongs to her.